Claire had just turned 45 a week ago. No party, no dinner, not even a card from her husband. He'd sent a text while on a business trip. "Happy birthday, sorry I'm slammed. Love you." That was it. She didn't reply. She sat in her quiet kitchen, coffee gone cold, staring at the raindrops slipping down the window. The house was silent like most days. Her husband, Mark, worked late, traveled often, and when home was glued to his laptop. Their conversations had shrunk to calendar logistics and what to cook. No arguments, no affection, just absence in the presence. That afternoon the doorbell rang. Claire opened it to a young man holding a package, a wide smile on his face. "Delivery for Claire." She blinked at the sound of her name, said with ease, almost familiarity. He couldn't have been more than 22. Tall, warm brown eyes, boyish charm. She signed for the package, trying not to let her robe slip open at the neck. "You have a beautiful house," he said casually, eyes scanning the decor. "Thank you," Claire replied, unsure why her stomach flipped at the compliment. "I'm Jason, by the way. I usually cover this route." He grinned before jogging back into the rain. Claire closed the door slower than necessary, holding the package tight. The next few days felt unusually long. Claire caught herself looking at the front gate more than usual. On Wednesday the bell rang again. Jason. This time with 2 small boxes and a short comment about the weather. Claire noticed how easily he laughed, how he looked her in the eyes. Something Mark hadn't done in weeks. That night, she stood in front of her mirror longer than usual, brushing her hair, applying a touch of lip color she hadn't worn in months. Jason returned 2 days later, same route. "Hope I'm not interrupting anything," he said with a smirk. Claire laughed, too quickly, and invited him to wait inside while she checked if the package was correct. He stood in the hallway, commenting on the smell of fresh coffee, and she offered him a cup. He declined politely but lingered. "You always here alone?" he asked lightly, not suggestively. She hesitated. "Most days, yeah. Must get boring." He shrugged. "You get used to it." He nodded, not pushing, just listening. Before leaving, he said, "You don't look like someone who should be bored." She laughed it off, but her cheeks flushed. After he left, she stayed at the door, heart racing. The mirror caught her reflection again, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't look invisible. She felt something stirring, something she hadn't felt in years. Not love, not lust, just attention. And the terrifying realization that she missed being seen. Claire started checking the clock more often. 3:30 was when Jason usually came by. She wasn't ordering things just to see him. At least that's what she told herself. But the packages kept arriving. Books, candles, a new teapot she didn't need. Jason noticed. "Another package, huh? Someone's keeping the economy alive." He smiled, handing it over. Claire smiled back, brushing her fingers against his as she took it. The contact lingered a second too long. She began expecting the bell, dressing just a little nicer in the afternoons. A fitted blouse, lipstick that matched her old confidence. Jason noticed that too. "You always look great, but today. Wow." He said it so naturally, no hesitation, like he meant every word. Claire's stomach flipped again. They talked longer with each visit. Jason told her about college classes, his band, how he hated economics but loved photography. Claire told him she used to paint before life got busy. He asked to see her work. She laughed it off but felt flattered. One Friday it was pouring. Jason showed up soaked, hair dripping into his eyes. Didn't expect rain. Got a towel. She rushed to get one, handed it to him. Their fingers brushed again. "Thanks. You're a lifesaver. You could have called in sick," she said, half joking. "And miss this stop." He grinned. She looked down, unsure how to reply. That evening, she couldn't stop thinking about it. She stood in the kitchen replaying that smile, the way he said it. She picked up her phone, typed his name from the delivery slip, and searched for him. His Instagram popped up. Photos of sunsets, his dog, a few shirtless beach pictures. She felt guilty scrolling but didn't stop. 2 nights later, she texted the number he left in case of mix-ups. "Hi. It's Claire. From earlier. Just checking if this is still your number." Seconds later. "Hey Claire. It is. Was hoping you'd text." She sat on her bed, staring at that reply. Her heart thumped. He typed slowly. "Hope you got home dry today. Barely. But thinking about you helped. It was harmless." That's what she kept telling herself. Just talking. No harm in that. The next day, no package. But a message. "No deliveries today. Want to grab coffee instead?" Claire hesitated. She stared at the text for an hour before replying. "Okay." They met in a quiet cafe out of town. No one she knew. Conversation was easy. Jason listened in a way Mark hadn't in years. He asked about her dreams, her art, how she felt. Not just what she did all day. As they walked to the car, Jason brushed her hand. She didn't pull away. At the door, he looked at her. "You deserve more than being someone's background noise." Then he leaned in. Not forcefully, not rushed. Just a soft, deliberate kiss. Claire's body froze, then melted. Her lips moved without thinking. When she pulled back, she didn't say a word. She just got in her car, hands shaking. Her world tilting in a way she didn't know how to fix. Claire didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed beside Mark, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. He didn't notice the way she clutched her phone under the blanket, rereading the message Jason sent hours ago. "I can't stop thinking about that kiss." She didn't reply. But her fingers hovered. She knew it wasn't just about the kiss. It was about how alive she felt. The next morning, Mark left early. Claire made coffee but didn't drink it. Her phone buzzed. "Jason again. Still thinking about you. Want to talk." She typed back. "Come over." It wasn't planned. It wasn't thought out. Just happened. He arrived looking unsure. Claire opened the door without speaking. He stepped inside. Their eyes met, and she kissed him first this time. Desperate, unfiltered, electric. No words. Just hands, mouths, hearts pounding. It was fast but not rushed, intense but not careless. Years of loneliness poured out in one breathless moment. Afterwards, silence filled the space. Claire sat on the edge of the bed, fingers tangled in the sheet. Jason stood near the window, looking out but not seeing anything. "I don't know what this means," he finally said. "I don't either," she whispered, not meeting his eyes. He got dressed slowly, like he didn't want to leave but didn't know how to stay. Before walking out, he turned to her. "You're incredible, Claire. I meant everything I said." Then he left. She stayed in that room for hours, numb. It didn't feel like triumph. Didn't feel like power. It felt like falling into something she couldn't stop. That evening, Mark came home, distracted as always. He kissed her cheek without looking, asked about dinner. She nodded, answering automatically. The weight in her chest grew heavier. Jason texted again the next morning. "I miss you." She didn't reply. She stared at the screen, then powered off her phone. Her emotions were tangled. Guilt, longing, fear, confusion. She tried to go back to normal. Dinners with Mark. Morning routines. But her thoughts kept returning to Jason. His voice, his touch, the way he looked at her like she mattered. Days passed. Jason stopped messaging. A new driver brought the next package. He didn't smile. Didn't say her name. Claire took it, closed the door and stood there, hollow. The silence from Jason hurt more than she expected. She'd gotten used to being wanted. That night, she stood in the shower and cried until the water ran cold. She didn't know what she'd broken more, her marriage or herself. It wasn't about Jason anymore. It was about what she needed and what she gave up trying to get it. Claire avoided mirrors for days. Every glance felt like an accusation. She kept busy. Laundry, cleaning, errands she didn't need to run. Anything to stop thinking. But the silence inside the house made it impossible. Mark was there physically but barely present. He asked fewer questions than usual. Maybe he sensed something, maybe he didn't care enough to notice. One afternoon, she found herself holding her phone, fingers hovering over Jason's contact. She didn't text. Instead, she opened the Notes app and wrote, "You reminded me what it feels like to be wanted. I'm not proud of what we did, but I needed to feel human again. I don't expect anything. Just thank you." She saved it, didn't send. Mark came home early that night. Unusual. He dropped his bag on the kitchen chair and looked at her, really looked. "You've been distant." Claire froze. "I've just been tired." He pulled a receipt from his pocket. "Coffee shop. 2 drinks. Dated 2 weeks ago. You don't even like oat milk lattes." Her heart stopped. No lies left. She sat down, too exhausted to run. "I met someone. Happened. I didn't plan it." Mark's face didn't twist in rage. He didn't shout. He looked hurt. More than she'd seen in years. "Was it serious?" "No. It was a moment. One I shouldn't have let happen." They sat in silence. Then he asked, "Why?" "Because I was invisible here. You stopped seeing me. You stopped touching me, talking to me. I was lonely." Mark ran a hand through his hair, then looked at her. "So what now?" She didn't have an answer. "I don't know." The next few days were heavy with tension. Mark wasn't cold, but he wasn't warm either. They talked more cautiously. He started showing up for dinner, asked about her day, even sat beside her on the couch. It was strange, like they were meeting again after years apart. But something inside Claire had shifted. She couldn't unfeel what she'd felt. She couldn't undo it. She wasn't sure she even wanted to. Jason never texted again. Maybe he knew it had no place in her world. Or maybe he moved on as young men do. Either way, the silence from him became just another layer of emptiness. Claire stood at the window one morning, watching the breeze shift the trees. Mark brought her coffee without asking how she liked it. She accepted it anyway. She didn't know if they would make it. Trust, once cracked, doesn't always heal. But she knew one thing. She couldn't go back to being unseen. Whatever came next, rebuilding, separation, something in between, it would have to include her. All of her. Not a wife. Not a caretaker. Woman. One who made a mistake, yes. But also one who finally remembered she was still alive.